So, okay. So during the break, I was wondering, why things didn't appear on the left side. Actually, it was right. You have two types of container in Bootstrap. One is container uh, without fluid, so the standard container, which has a limit on the width, okay? And the other is container fluid. I was wondering, how do I write fluid? I mean, is this an attribute? So I have props that will be passed to the container component of Bootstrap, or it's something else I need to do? Well, I just search in the internet, okay? So you just search for React Bootstrap. In the documentation, it says fluid container. You can use container, fluid, so with an attribute without value. We are going to see them in the next hour. And it takes 100% of the viewport. And indeed, if you add fluid, okay, it saves and it takes 100% of the viewport, okay? So, oops, no. So basically the body takes the whole size. Or the div actually. Div is better because it's this one that takes the size. Okay, I mean, but it was just a curiosity. I mean, not really important. So now we are going to talk about elements. How do they map to the HTML elements? JSX, about the syntax, what you can write, what you cannot, and so on. And then we will experiment with the components. We will take the question and answer example that we developed last week during the lectures, and we'll try to rearrange it using React components. Okay? I remind you, React components are defined by us, the ones who decide how to organize the application. Okay. So, this is how React components work at the level of React functions. It's just shown here in the slide just to make sure you have a general understanding, but you are not supposed to use these methods. Okay? We already saw this create root render that basically renders the element, and the element decide how the rest appears. And how the rest is connected to this element? Well, that's because there are components, okay, defined by some functions, like the one we saw before, function my button, and so on. Or they are predefined, like we use the, I'm not sure we use div, but we use the p, the paragraph, and so on. These are predefined inside React. All HTML elements have a corresponding component in React. And the function needs to return actually not an element, but an element tree. Okay, so a single element is also an element tree, but when we will have siblings, let's say, we will have to have a single root element, the root of the element tree, that is composed, of course, by elements. Okay, so React elements. What are these React elements? Well, actually, it's an object describing a component instance or a DOM node and all its properties. Okay, so actually it's a single element in the virtual DOM. It's like the element in HTML. Okay, it's just a bit more complex because it's a React element, so it has more properties and more stuff that is useful for React. Okay, so it contains the information about the component type. Either it's my components, so it's not predefined. It has let's say a name, okay, that I decide, or it is its default name that is the same as the HTML one. The properties, that means basically the attributes, and any child inside the element. You know that elements can be nested. So there are references to the children of the element. Okay? Remember, this is not an instance, but a description on how to construct the actual element in the DOM. Okay? Because React is descriptive. So basically, components are functions, they need to be called, and they return something that can be used to create elements in the virtual DOM and then in the DOM. Okay. This is the actual function of React. I mean, it's here for completeness, but the first part of the function that creates a React element is the type, which is actually a string. Okay. Like div, span, and all the default HTML elements are already defined in React. Okay, but we can in principle define any other new element. Then there are the props, the stuff we saw before. So the stuff that we pass as attribute in the components, and it becomes available in terms of properties of an object that is the parameter of the function that defines the component. And then the children. Just be careful of the fact that there are a couple of words, important words, that we cannot use for names in props, in attributes actually. That is class, which is very important because when you want to use styles, you need class, right? But class, unfortunately, it's a keyword in modern JavaScript because you can define classes, even though it's not, object-oriented so much. But class, unfortunately, is a reserved keyword. So when you need to use the class properties, so the one that allows you to use the CSS syntax and stuff, you need to use class name and not class when defining attribute in JSX. Okay, so that's this, let's say, problem. Okay, and React decided to solve it, changing the name for the attribute. And the same for for, but for is less used. It's just in forms and sometimes when you attach some labels and stuff. Okay, for again, it's a reserved keyword. Okay, and then there are the children attached to a certain element. Okay, so that is a React node object that can be like a string or a number. So like when you have the HTML tags and you have some text inside, or you might have something else nested inside. So other HTML elements, here it means React elements, or even an array. It can also be an array, okay, of React nodes. And this will be very useful because it allows us to create a list of elements very easily. Okay. Okay, or just a nested element or nested elements that we simply write inside. Okay, so it's more difficult to tell than to use. Okay, just remember a few conventions that you're expected to follow. Some are mandatory, like the first one. DOM elements are always lowercase, so when you use them in the JSX, JSX is actually something that will be translated into JavaScript, and React defines all HTML elements in lowercase. So you need to use lowercase. React components are always uppercase, starting with the uppercase letter means. Okay. The two types of elements can be mixed, nested, and so on in any way. Okay, that's fine. And that's what we saw before. Okay. You see here, basically there are only React elements. Actually already defined for us by React Bootstrap, but they are React elements. And I think in my button, we have, no, we only have the button that again is from React Bootstrap. If we use the lowercase one, we can do that. But that's the normal traditional HTML button, okay? Or P or whatever we would like to use. Of course, here the button makes sense. Okay, good. So a few words about JSX, a human way of describing trees. Okay. Of course, we don't use the previous function to define the trees because it would be a nightmare. It would be really useless from the point of view of usability. So what is a JSX? It's just XML fragments inside the JavaScript code. And the syntax is very simple. All tags must be closed or self-closing. You know that in HTML or XML, you need to open a tag, and at a certain point you need to close it, and have everything balanced. So if something is nested inside, it must be closed before the outside element. Or you can even self-close the element just with this syntax. Okay, if you have no children inside, you can avoid writing the end tag and just put slash in the end of the first one. Okay. We will see examples. And then this translator automatically will translate the JSX into JavaScript code. Okay. So let's see some other points about JSX. Well, when the JSX encounters React components, they are basically expanded to create a virtual DOM. Okay, so if you create a component button, well, React knows that is a component defined by you, so there is a function somewhere to call, and it goes there, it takes the return value, and it substitutes the component B, uppercase B button, with the return value that you give in the function. Okay, so if button returns button class B, etc., that's the stuff that will be substituted to the start tag and of course to the end tag. And what's inside, and if you say that to put the children inside, what is inside will be put here as children of your of what you returned from the function. Okay. So in short, React asks every component we define to render itself. So it calls the function, it takes the return value. There will be a set of elements, React elements. Some are mapped directly on HTML elements, so there's nothing else to do. Some are other components. React will call the function of these other components until only basic HTML elements remain. Okay? Because you need to have a virtual DOM that can be directly mapped on the actual DOM in the browser. So the browser has no components. So at a certain point, we need to end up with standard HTML components. So repeat until only DOM nodes are present. Okay? So that's the render phase of React. We can nest components and things as we like, but at a certain point, React needs to translate this representation into basic HTML elements, because we need to render them in the browser. Okay? But this is done automatically by React. So we just need to know that things work like this. Okay? And so, in short, we use the syntax, the JSX syntax with open and closed tag or the self-closing tag. And we can put it anywhere. A JavaScript expression is syntactically valid. It means that we can use the JSX basically anywhere in our code. Okay? The most useful point is in that return that we saw before, right? You saw here return, and then we expect a JavaScript expression, and okay, we can write JSX. Why can we write JSX? Because actually JSX will be translated into some JavaScript. So where a JavaScript expression is valid, we can write JSX. Okay. But it means also that JSX can also be stored in arrays, objects, and so on. Because It's just something that is a valid JavaScript value, okay? Basically a reference to an object in short, okay? Sometimes you might want to enclose the JSX with round brackets just for clarity, okay? And you can do that because they are JavaScript expressions, okay? In the end. So everything is valid in JavaScript is valid with the JSX. You see here an example of the self-closing tag. You see this message, which I'm not sure if it's a React Bootstrap component or user-defined, I don't know. But you can avoid to have the closing tag because if you have no children, you can simply close it like this. Okay, but this is a valid HTML as well. Okay, just be careful that the tag name, that means the name of the component, must be in scope. You saw that we imported the function that defines the component where we needed it. So, like here, we are in the file button.jsx, export default my button, and on the other side in app.jsx we need to import it. Okay, if we don't import it, it doesn't work. Okay, let me save it. Did I save it? Yes. I think it doesn't work. Let me see. And yeah, you see that something happened. My button is not defined. Okay, and nothing comes out. So when you are in the lab and there's a nice white page, check the console. Okay, typically you forgot to import or declare something because it's JavaScript. If the variable is not defined, the code stops the execution. Okay, so let me fix it. Save. Okay, so now it works. Okay, just remember to clean the console. I mean, errors can be from previous situations. Okay, so fine. I mean, you need to remember to import stuff, but it's easy. If you don't do it, it doesn't work. How do you define attributes in JSX? Well, actually, any JavaScript exception expression is accepted, and tag attributes you saw before are converted to props. So basically, string attributes. So if I write something like color equal to blue, become string valued props. So I have an object props, which has a property color, the first part here, the name of the attribute, and the value, that is the value of the attribute. If you put a number, that's the same. If you put a Boolean value, that's the same. And you cannot put, well, no, you can even put more complex stuff, but we will see it later. Okay, so basically any JavaScript expression is accepted, but be careful of the fact that to put JavaScript expressions, so not strings but something else, you need to open the curly brackets. Okay, shadow size equal to, open the bracket 2, or true, which is actually JavaScript, or this stuff which is actually JavaScript, a JavaScript expression, something that evaluates to a value, because it needs to be something that can be used as a value of a property of props. Okay, the content between the tags, the tag open and closed, is passed as a special property props children. So this might happen to you sometimes in the lab. You define a component that you would like to use putting some children inside your component. Okay, so without using it as a self-closing component, you need to remember to render props children at a certain point in the render of your method. Otherwise, the children will not appear. But again, it's easy to debug. Something is missing, okay? And if unsure, of course, you can call us. The children can be basically anything, okay? And in particular, it can be a JavaScript expression returning an array of JSX elements, which are inserted as siblings. This is very useful for creating lists of elements, okay? And we will use it later for the example when we have the list of answers, okay? Okay. Okay, I mean, just remember when you open the curly brackets, basically you can write any JavaScript code and you can mix a JSX and JavaScript code, okay? Because actually JavaScript code are values, JavaScript values in the end, okay? So you see there's a JSX inside JavaScript, inside JSX, inside JavaScript. So that's the outside JavaScript and so on. Totally fine, okay? Remember just that undefined null or booleans values are not rendered. I mean, there's no way of rendering such values, okay? If you want to show a number, you need to have a number. If you want to show a string, you need to have a string. And if you have a component, React will call the function of the component, will have a return value, and on the basis of the return value, we decided what to show, okay? Sometimes it's useful because you don't want to show anything. Like the user is admin, yes, you render something, otherwise you render nothing, okay? That's not about security, it's just about the user interface. You don't want to make some buttons of the admin appear if you're not admin. It's useless, right? I mean, security is about you know, preventing from doing operations and so on, but having a good user interface is, let's say, the first step of having a good designed web application. I mean, if you log in an application, you're not the admin, you're not, you don't want to show the admin buttons, regardless if they work or not or whatever, it happens on the server. I mean, it just, you know, only render what is useful for the user at that moment. Okay, good. Oh, this is what I was saying before. In the component, you might want to render the props children to include the nested elements. Like if you design a component container that can contain other stuff, and you forget to render, so to return props children somewhere, well, you will not see this stuff when you test the application. But I mean, it's easy because you will see something is missing. Okay. Boolean HTML attribute. There are some Boolean attributes. We saw it before with the container fluid. Fluid is Boolean. It says no fluid equal to something. Okay, but typically like input disabled, option selected, and stuff like that. I mean, you can put a Boolean value in JSX. That is for older version of React, but modern version of React also support this syntax. So basically, if you put the attribute, it's set to true. Otherwise, it's set to false. Okay. So very intuitive. What is less intuitive are comments. Okay, comments are really ugly because you cannot use the traditional HTML syntax for comments. It doesn't work. Okay. So how do you create a comment in JSX? Well, you open JavaScript and you use the JavaScript way of commenting. Really bad, right? Otherwise, you delete the code and you put it somewhere else. or you do, I mean, say, how to say, undo, redo, and stuff like that, okay? But, I mean, if you want to keep it into the code, that's the only way. Okay, DOM attribute names. Okay, just remember that attribute names are camel case. That means that the first initial is lowercase and the other are uppercase. Like the on change that we saw before has to be written as on lowercase and C change uppercase. Okay. Just remember that style attribute, which I hope you don't use so much, takes an object, a JavaScript object, and not a string. Okay, in JSX. So div style equal to the first curly bracket is to open JavaScript, and the second one, the blue one, is to open a JavaScript object. And then there are attributes with values, with a comma, okay, because this is a JavaScript object, not a string of CSS, okay. But I mean, and again, margin top, stuff like that has to use the camel case syntax. It's just, you know, something you get used to it, and if you're unsure, you just search in the internet, okay? Okay. Okay, the spread syntax might be useful, but I mean, I must tell you, I didn't see this stuff so much in the exam, so probably not that much useful. I mean, when you need to pass something, you just have a list of attributes. Okay. Yeah, I think you can have a look at this, but I mean, not really so much useful at the moment. Class and for, I told you we need to use class name just for this very specific but also important attribute, because class is a reserved keyword in JavaScript, so when JSX is translated to JavaScript, it will not work if we don't change the name. HTML entities may not be supported in all the JSX. Well, just try, okay? And otherwise you search the internet or use the Unicode escape sequence or whatever. But I mean, I don't expect you to use that much of this stuff, okay? Okay, so let's come to components. Well, we already saw the components. There are just a few slides, and then we experiment together what you are going to do tomorrow in the lab. Okay. So components are functions. So you define the function with your name. So you decide your name, my button, my really nice button. You pass only a parameter props. Well, actually, you don't pass. You declare a parameter, single parameter props, and React passes the props to you. And then you have to have a return with something. Okay. Returns elements. Okay. You can use functions like this, arrow function, whatever. It doesn't really matter. It's just a JavaScript function. Okay. Okay, must return a React element tree. This is important because sometimes you get an error if you think you can return different elements at the same level. No, this is not allowed. There should be a single root element. Okay, and there is also a way to handle the situation in which you don't have this single element. That's the last slide. They must be a pure function, no side effects, and idempotent. So it means I pass the same props. The return value needs to be the same. So it means I cannot define global variables or you know stuff use stuff outside the function. Okay, which is computed outside the function. If we need to have a state, as we saw before, there is a way in React to have this state, so something which is permanent, that persists after you called the function, but it needs to be managed by React, and you cannot manage it by yourself. You cannot define your variable somewhere and expect everything to work. Okay? Last few things. Some tips. Creating components. Well, try to create reasonably sized components, not too big, not too small. Okay, you don't want to have a component with a single element. Probably they're not that useful unless they are really peculiar. you don't, again, want to have a really big components because, you know, code is based on modularity. As when you program with functions, you don't want to have really big functions, but also not functions that only do one thing. And components can be constructed by composing other components. It's really normal situation. Remember that if you have children, you need to render them in the component. And sometimes when you code, you realize that the component is becoming too big. Well, you do as when you program with functions. You split things into two different functions, more functions, and here you split things in more components. That's all. Lists and keys. Lists are important because it's like 100% sure it will be present at the exam. Because if we don't have a list of stuff, I mean, we have really nothing to show in a web application, right? So you load the list of anything from the server, and then you need to show the content. And so basically, if you if you return if you pass an expression which is an array, like this list items, this is an array because it's a return value of a map. This is this is rendered as a set of elements all at the same level, okay, automatically by React. Okay, so take this example. Function up. We have 5 numbers, an array of 5 numbers. A component defined by me, number list. I pass a prop numbers with the name numbers. So props numbers. This numbers comes from here, from the name of the attribute. Okay. So numbers. I do numbers. Numbers is an array. So it continues to be an array here. Map. For each number, I return a JSX. Li, list item, with a number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so list item will contain an array that contains 5 elements, which are 5 JSX fragments. Okay? They are simply passed here, used as an expression here, and React will understand this value refer to an array, and so it will render each element at the same level. Okay, so it will do what we expect, a list, okay, of children at the same level. Good. So the only thing you need to know is that when you construct a list of elements in this way, okay, not just copy and pasting, but it's dynamic because you have an array in the memory, you must also pass a unique key attribute to identify each item, okay? Because React uses this unique key to identify which item have changed. Because you remember that it has to make this diff very efficiently between the virtual DOM, old version and new version, okay? And this key, if it's the same, it means for React, well, nothing has changed, and I skip this element, I go to the next. Okay, so I don't remember if I didn't check actually if the latest version of React gives you an error or a warning. The version 18, the previous one, gave you a warning saying, well, you forgot the key attribute, please put it because it makes things much more efficient. How do you create this key? Well, just key equal to something. Okay, just make sure that the value you use here for each element in the array is unique, but just for that list. Okay, not globally in the page, not globally in the web application, just for that list. If you have already a unique ID, because things come from a database, whatever, and you're sure the idea is unique, you're free to use that ID, that's fine. Otherwise, you create a unique ID in the code, like enumerating the elements, but you must make sure that when the content of the element changes, you change this key. Okay? So uniqueness is only required in the same list, not globally, because it's an internal stuff for React. It encounters a list, it just checks if every key is the same, fine. I don't check further. I go on and I assume everything remained the same. And note that keys are not available as props in the component. If you need the key, you need to pass an additional attribute. This is a bit unfortunate. Okay. I don't really know why. I didn't investigate why. There's probably some reason, but I cannot really tell you. Also, changing a key is also useful, even outside this, to force React to re-render the component. But I think we have an example at a certain point later in the lecture, so I will show it to you. Last thing we need to know, and then we play a little bit with the code, is what to do when you don't have a root element to return. I told you need to return an element tree in the React component. And if you don't have it, well, either you create it, like you have a span or div, so you introduce a new HTML component. But if for some reasons you don't want to introduce that element because it creates problems in your HTML structure and so on, there's this special element that is called React fragment that has this name, react.fragment, but it also has this very convenient, much shorter syntax, so kind of empty node. Okay, it's a React fragment. It's transparent from the point of view of HTML, so it doesn't get rendered in anything in the DOM, virtual DOM or real DOM. And so basically you can use it as brackets to include everything. Okay, you cannot just simply put round brackets. You need a React element because you need an element tree. Okay, good. I know it's a lot of information, but it's something that you will get used to when you practice a little bit, like tomorrow in the lab. And now we practice a little bit. Okay? So basically, let's create a new application. Well, actually, our QA application, so week 07, so let's stop. And we go here and we do what we did before. npm create write at latest React QA. Okay, that's the name of the application that now we will carry on until the end of the course. QA means question and answer. Is our application, right? React, JavaScript, and that's all. cd React QA npm install. Takes a while. It downloads this 50 plus megabytes of stuff. Actually, hopefully it doesn't download, but it takes from the local cache and checks the hash and whatever. npm run dev. Okay. What we see here, well, we reload the stuff. The usual stuff, okay? The basic page, right? But always create this template. And now what we are going to do is we would like to show something similar to what we had in last week, right? So open folder, open with the browser. No, that's empty, right? I didn't serve it correctly. I wanted to show you. Yeah, this. Well. Yes. I mean, just not loading Bootstrap correctly, but it doesn't really matter. Okay. So that's the stuff we would like to get. Okay. We could run yeah, let me run it because it looks so bad. So week 06. That's what we did last week, right? Node index JS localhost 3001. Index public index HTML, right? No? What's the name? Huh? Static. Oh, thank you. Static, yes. Thank you. That's what we would like to have, okay? But made of React. Okay? This is not a React page. Oops. I always press the wrong button. Sorry, guys. Okay? It's not a React page. Okay, good. So let me stop this stuff, which is confusing for us. Okay, so how do we do? I mean, we have a HTML, it's fine. I mean, first thing we do, we take the old HTML, we put everything into the return value of app. They are standard HTML components. That's fine, right? So it should work with minor adjustments, but it should work. Okay, so let's try to do it. That's exactly what you're going to do by yourself in the lab with your example. Okay, so let me take this stuff, so div, etc. So everything except the script. I mean, the script is managed differently, right? So just the content. And they go here, week 07, no, that's my solution. Week 07, React UA source app JSX. Okay, I don't care about what White writes, so this is deleted. Oh, you see the fragment, by the way, here, right? You see the fragment element. Okay, copy and paste. Okay, it will not work out of the box as it is, but I mean, it's a start. So now we save. Okay, we try. You will see something doesn't work. Okay, what do you do when it doesn't work? Open the console. Always open, inspect to the console and stuff. Okay. Invalid DOM property class. Did you mean class name? Of course, I just told you in the slides, right? Yeah, everything you write as class, it has to be changed into class name. So let me replace class equal to class name equal to. I think this is changed, all right? Yes. Save. Let's see. Still doesn't work. What's the problem? Style prop expect a mapping from style properties to value, not a string. I told you, right? What are we going to do? I mean, we can also get rid of this for the moment, but let's try just to see how things work. Okay, so style, well, it takes a JavaScript object. Okay, and then this should be a string, and then I think to no, still doesn't work. Unexpected token, comma, I think font size, we need to have the camel style. That should be enough. Let's try. Yeah, well, more or less. Something appears. It's already a good step, okay? Not really as we like, okay? Well, this issue, we'll fix it later. Why it appears as centered and not the other one? Well, actually, don't forget as I told you before, I mean, it's full of CSS we don't use. Just select all the CSS that Byte has created for you and delete it. Take everything, delete, and save. Okay. So at least we have something that is more or less formatted as we like. Okay. Well, there's still something that we're missing, which is Bootstrap. You remember Bootstrap? I mean, we didn't install Bootstrap, so we cannot expect that things are styled according to Bootstrap, right? So let me try to install Bootstrap so you know how to do. Well, first, install it as before, npm install Bootstrap. Here it's very simple. You don't have to search for the hash integrity and stuff. Let me install React Bootstrap as well. Okay, so we don't come back again for this as well. We are not using React Bootstrap yet. We are just installing it. Okay, good. At this point, we need to import Bootstrap because it's not imported here. You see, all this stuff is useless. Bootstrap, let me remember how to do. Let me copy this way. Okay. That's the way in which you import Bootstrap. I mean, we don't have to invent anything. We just copy and paste. Up. Okay. Save. Let's see the result. No, it crashed. What's wrong? Oh, no, I forgot to restart the server. Without the server, of course, you cannot test anything. Okay. Okay, something more reasonable, right? At least it has some sort of Bootstrap style. Okay, still empty. We can fix something through, but I mean, we are going towards React plus Bootstrap. Okay. So now, what are we going to do? Well, there was an error, right? Yes. In HTML, th cannot be a child of thead. Okay? This will cause a hydration error and so on. So, well, just be careful because the JSX syntax is very strict. Okay? So it has a lot of rules that in normal HTML will be tolerated. Okay? Like you know, you saw that it rendered in the browser before we moved this stuff as JSX in React. Okay, but actually, this expect that actually I don't remember. I tested it to the in the office this morning, but I don't remember. So when you don't know, you just search. Okay. You are not alone typically with this kind of errors. Okay. So I think it said something like thead tr th. Okay. Thead tr th. Let's check. Thead tr th. You see, I forgot the tr. Okay. The browser rendered it. But actually, it's, you know, the row is missing, right? And JSX will not tolerate these behaviors. Okay. So I need to be careful. But it tells me because it has to pass the JSX, so it will you know tell me when it encounters problems like this. So let me check if the error disappeared now. Let's reload the page. Okay, no errors in the console. That's good. Okay. Of course, somebody asked me, well, but can you reload the application? Well, of course, when I'm testing, of course, I can reload the application. I changed the application, so of course. Okay. When I'm testing the application at the exam, I don't want to reload the application. When the user is using your application, it must not be requested to reload your application. Okay, you're navigating on a website, you're using something, of course you're not supposed to reload everything. Okay, so, but just for testing, of course you can do. And then, well, let's try to create a component. Okay, so let's create something useful, like but simple. Okay, like the header component. Okay, so I would like to create a header component that renders according to the name I pass to this component. So it's a simple component, just one prop, no state, and depending on the attribute I pass, I can change the name that appears in the header. Okay, so I don't invent anything. I mean, I take some code, I just put it outside, I define a function header, uppercase, header, props, open the brackets, oops, return. Okay, don't forget, return a new line and then automatically insert the semicolon, so this code will not work, as you know the Visual Studio Code shows you. That's why we wrote with the open bracket, so we can go to a new line and it's easier to write and to keep things, let's say, indented and nicely formatted. Format selection, okay. Good. And now we need to use the header, right? How do we use the header? Well, the header was here, right? Header. Just remember that you need to either close it or make it self-closing. Let's try the self-closing syntax so you can, not too big. So you can see how it works. Save. Let's try. Every time you do a modification, try the application. Okay, no error, same appearance, that's good. If you have ideas, I mean, just tell me. We are live coding, so we are supposed to try your ideas as well. So I told you, well, I don't want components just to isolate stuff without having some behavior that is useful. I mean, without props, just a way to move HTML somewhere else. Okay, but let's pass a prop. What's the name I gave? It's app name. App name. That's fine. I decided to use this attribute name. Okay, I just invented it. App name is my heap overrun. Heap overrun. Okay, and let's forget for a moment about this heap overrun, and here we take props app name. Okay, so now there's an attribute whose name I decided myself. Okay, I just decided to use app name. Could be title, header name, whatever you want. Okay, the important thing is that this name is the same that appears here as a property of props, because React works in this way with components and the JSX and so on. Okay, so save and see the appearance. You see my heap overrun. So now I have a component which is a bit more flexible. It's very simple. I mean, it just draws a bar and writes a string. Okay, and if I change the stuff here, save, I change what appears in the component. Okay, So I designed a very simple component that can be controlled by a single prop, whose name I chose when I designed the component. And very simple component. Okay. And now we are going to do something more complicated, like I pass a list of answers, okay, and I'll try to render a table with a list of answers and so on, so something a bit more useful, okay. Just to, reflect on how much useful things can be. Remember that inside the curly brackets you can write any JavaScript expression. Like, it's not uncommon to see something like have a default value or whatever you want, or question mark and so on, to decide dynamically what to put here. Okay? So heap overrun. Let's say the default name of my header is heap overrun, but if somebody else has decided for another name, I just leave the other name. So my heap overrun. Let's eliminate the attribute. You see, it still works. Okay? What happens in case it's undefined? And then we will move to the table. Well, undefined does not get rendered. It's an empty string. Okay? Nothing shows up in the HTML. Okay? But I mean, all this stuff, you can experiment with these things in the lab. So let me leave it as like this. Okay, save. Okay, good. We can do the same for the footer and so on, but the footer is really, nothing to show. Okay? Let's try to do something more interesting for the table. Okay? In the table, let's create a component for the table. Okay, again, same system. Function my table. I write my table because there's a table in React Bootstrap I'm going to import in a few minutes. Okay, my table. So you cannot clash the names, right? My table props return and the table. Of course, now the table is empty. I need to put the table here, my table. Okay, let's try if it works. Yes, it still works, right? Yes, good. Okay. You see all these class names. I don't like that much having these class names with the names of the Bootstrap style, right? So let's do just for this one, because we still have some time, what we did before with the my app. So let's use the Bootstrap React, the React Bootstrap actually. You remember, import button from React Bootstrap. Which app is the one? This one, right? Yes. And we don't import button, but we import table. Okay? And you need to check in the documentation what's the name of the component and so on, but they are pretty intuitive, so you know. In my table, now I do table. Okay. And of course, if I open a component, I need to close the same component. Okay, save. Okay, nothing changed, but this time there's no class name, right? Because we already used the React Bootstrap component, so it already has the style. Okay, you still need to import the React CSS, but we have it. Sorry, the Bootstrap CSS, but we have it. Okay, but then on table and all the components like container, etc., we don't have to, you know, apply class names. So the code is much more readable as well. So let's come to the point here. What are we going to write here? I mean, we would like a JavaScript expression. We would like to try the array, right? but we have nothing to write here at the moment, right? So let's go back to well, to the code. I mean, we could go back to the code, last week's code. I think we had app, right? APIs. Yeah, actually we had the API, so not that good. Let me take it from here. So we just define a structure in JavaScript. Actually, let me copy and paste. I'll show you the code in a minute. Paste. Okay. So, in short, I wrote two functions, constructor functions, because I use the this inside, and then I will call them with the new. This is not mandatory. If you don't like the constructor functions and constructing object with new and so on for the exam, it's fine. I mean, you can use whatever system you like. But just to show you something different, you know, we do it like this. So function answer, and there are some properties of answer, function question, some property of question, some methods, and there is an init method as well that basically creates a few answers. So I have something to read on the other side of the code. Okay, export questions and answers. So this is a named export. Okay, and so I put everything into a JavaScript. I call it JS, it's fine. I mean, since there's no JSX, it's fine. If you call it JSX, it's the same. I mean, we don't really, it doesn't really matter. But at this point, let me import it. Import, I think questions and answers. It was question from QA models. Okay, that's nice. It suggested everything for me. Even without the copilot, this has no copilot. Okay, so it's already intelligent enough to suggest this stuff. Okay, and then remember, this is just JavaScript code, so you can execute the stuff before the rest of the functions. I mean, it's not the normal behavior in React applications at the exam, because at the exam you load the application and then first thing you go to the server and you ask information from the server. Since we don't have a way to ask the server information for the moment, okay, we cannot just type fetch, because fetch works in JavaScript loaded directly in the browser. If we need to take the result of the fetch and put it somewhere, we need the React state, and we still don't have the React state and so on. Okay, so we cannot just load stuff from the server. Just trust me for the moment. So, I mean, we just put some code here. It's not the best thing we can do, but just to experiment a little bit is perfectly fine. Okay, cons question and stuff. Let me just copy and paste in the interest of not wasting time. Okay, so now I create question, new question, and question init, answer list. Let me do something like this. I'm not sure it works. I hope it works. Answer list. Not really so nice. Oh, day.js, sorry. You saw QA models import day.js. You see how easy it is importing packages now. I just need to install them. Okay, so stop npm install day.js. Okay. Okay, good. It's not the best thing, but I just wanted to show now I have in the JavaScript environment the 4 objects, the answers. So I can create something with this array. Okay? So let's comment this really bad stuff. And my table. Well, actually, I need to create something here, and it should be an array. Answer list, okay? I cannot just give the array. The array is not JSX. here I want to have JSX. I'm in the middle of stuff that needs to be rendered in the virtual DOM and then in the actual DOM. So I need something that fits here. Okay, map element and arrow, and then let me just copy and paste a little bit again. Where is the stuff? Actually, I had another component that I will publish later. Okay, that was a component for a single row of the table. Okay, but we don't have so much time now, so we need to be quick. So here date format, fine. Okay. Button is not present here, right? So I think we need to import button, and then date format. So we need to import the day.js as well. Okay. Import the day.js. Okay. No, well, no, we don't need to import it because it's already something that has been created by the other module. Well, it doesn't matter. Okay, let's try if it works. Okay, so you see what we did. There's an array. We return an array of JSX. Each element in the array is this JSX, tr with something inside. Okay. Let's see if it works. Let's reload it. I want to read the error. Okay. But you see that I have 4 elements in the array, and now I populated the table with the content. But just with this syntax, I mean, this is just a valid JavaScript expression. It's an array. Okay, because the map returns an array, and I return JSX elements. Okay. Let's read the error or the warning. Yes. Each child in a list should have a unique key prop. You remember what I said in the slides, right? You must pass a unique key attribute because it makes things much more efficient. At a certain point, maybe in React, they will not accept list without a key. Okay? So key equal to, well, I'm not sure. Do I have an ID? I don't remember. Is there an ID? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes. What's the name? ID. Well, why not? EID. Don't forget the brackets. This is a JavaScript value. Okay? Save. Okay? The error disappeared. And I got the page as I like. Right? Of course, buttons don't work. That's fine. Okay? But at least I transformed what I had before in something that uses some components. Okay? Answer list can come from props. Okay? So, my table list, answer list. Okay? List. I call them list. I make the component more flexible. Props list. Okay? So it comes from props. Save. Again. So the appearance is the same. But what did I do? Now I have a my table. I give a props list and it renders the content. And the stuff can come from another place as an attribute of my component. Okay? At a certain point, this attribute will be substituted by a state that we will load with information coming from the server and so on. But we don't have to touch the table anymore. It's a component. It's like a function. We define an interface that is which props it takes, and that's all. We forget about the table. Okay? And of course, you can apply the same say behavior and the same approaches to all the other parts of the of your application. So I'm just going to tell you and not writing the stuff, but we said before, where's the up? Well, the container, we can use the Bootstrap container component for the rows. Well, we didn't use the rows here, right? Oh, we used the... Oh yeah, we still need to make this element work. Well, just import the stuff. I'm going to tell you, because maybe in the lab you use it. But before doing that, let me install it. Don't forget you need to install it. Bootstrap icons. Because they make things so nicer and it's so quick that I know it's just appearance, but it's Bootstrap icons / fonts, right? Font. You just need to icons. You just need to search a little bit in the internet, but you know, for this basic stuff, yeah, I need to reload, restart the server. Yeah, you see the icon, okay? So you have the icons as well. But I mean, try to convert everything you can in React Bootstrap components, because it makes your life easier. That's simple, very simple, okay? Like you have a navigation bar, you can use the one from Bootstrap, it's navbar, I think. You can make a component to render the row, okay? I will make it, let's say, at home in the office, and for next time I will publish a version, I mean, a new commit with the component for the row, okay? It's very easy to do. You just take, again, this stuff, create a function, pass a prop, and that's all, okay? And so you can structure your application in the form of React components, okay? So I think it's more or less all for today, and you have all the elements you need for tomorrow's lab. Try to do the same with your code, your HTML code, or if you didn't do the previous labs, you have the solution, start from our code, that's fine, and try to use React components and be familiar with the components. And next lecture, Thursday, we will see React state, okay? So how to introduce a bit more dynamic behavior in the application, okay? Okay, if there are any questions, I can answer, otherwise I stop the recording.